It is the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast back here as we are the week before the draft. We'll start with the draft when it comes to the Kansas City Chiefs. We're going to talk about what they have to get done in this draft. How many things do they have to have? How many things do they need? We'll get into that right now here on the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast. Jalen Hurts is the top paid quarterback. Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson, Justin Herbert, probably falling behind, probably getting more. When does the Patrick Mahomes contract get opened up? Why is Mahomes back in Texas working the receivers? Can they reach that same level of chemistry they had last year? Who emerges as the number 2 receiving threat after Travis Kelce? Do we find that out from what happened in Texas? Andy Reid talks about Juwan Taylor at left tackle. Talks about the NFLPA grades not being real happy with his trainer and the training room. We get into all that next here on the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast.
You're listening to the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast, the most in-depth analysis of the Kansas City Chiefs on planet Earth, breaking down the Chiefs like no one else can. Red, Gold, and Bold is hosted by Jeff Chadiha, Eric Eager, and Soren Petro. Jeff Chadiha is a senior columnist and on-air personality for the NFL Network and NFL.com. Eric Eager is the vice president of research and development for Sumer Sports. Soren Petro is the afternoon drive host of the program on Sports Radio 810 WHB in Kansas City. The Red, Gold, and Bold podcast is proudly brought to you by Gann Asphalt and Concrete, Kansas City's nationally recognized full-service paving and pavement maintenance contractor, making parking lot problems disappear since 1994. Free consultations, no commissions, in-house crews, and every project comes with a written warranty. Find them online at GannAsphalt.com or call 816-484-3338. Gann Asphalt and Concrete. One contractor, all things parking lot. Gann Asphalt and Concrete is now hiring for all positions: project manager, dump truck drivers, operators, and crew members. Starting pay up to $30 per hour based on experience, with paid time off and insurance, just to name a few of the benefits. Check out GannAsphalt.com for more info. Now, here are the hosts of the best Chiefs podcast, Jeff Chadiha, Eric Eager, and Soren Petro.
That's right. Thank you, Curtis. The best Chiefs podcast. And we promise you, Eric Eager did not pay Curtis Siebold to say exactly that. We are proudly brought to you by Gann Asphalt and Concrete, the best when it comes to paving, pavement maintenance. Everything you need for parking lot, making parking lot problems disappear since 1994. GannAsphalt.com is where you can find them. Jeff Chadiha, Eric Eager, Soren Petro with you. We get ever closer to the draft. Eric, let's start with you. Chiefs draft. What has to get done in this draft in your mind for the Kansas City Chiefs?
I think people would be disappointed if they didn't come out with a tackle, an edge, a wide receiver, and probably a defensive tackle. Whatever order, I think that the Chiefs have done a wonderful job of making that order less relevant than it was a season ago, where, you know, if they didn't come out with a corner in the first few rounds, we were going to be a little concerned. If they didn't come out with an edge in the first few rounds, we would be concerned. I think they need to obviously get depth at those positions. If they end up with a great player at any one of those positions, wonderful. But I think they mainly need depth at those 4 positions. And I think if you come out of day 2 and you haven't addressed at least 3 of those positions, I think that would be a concern.
All right, Jeff?
Guy get a starter at right tackle, or somebody who you think can be a competent starter at right tackle. It's just, we've talked about this before with Lucas Niang. Your internet issues still up. People want to know what happened to that customer service rep you were talking to last week. Huh? Still alive?
Yeah,
in the trunk of the car.
There was a tech.
Have they ID'd the body?
There was a tech here yesterday. You guys heard some of my comments, or I tweeted you guys, or not tweeted, texted you guys about that. It was finally confirmed to me that it's not just sitting here. The problem is not in my house, and there will be somebody out to dig at some point. So we roll the dice here tonight, guys. If you caught the last one, I had big issues at the end. You know, knock on some wood or pressed paper, whatever this desk is made of. And we do a little bit better. So I apologize, Jeff. I couldn't help but not react.
Right. But I actually forgot about it. It was such a small storyline in last week's episode. But yeah, they got to find a right tackle, and it's if they don't, again, for me, this is one of those issues where it affects two positions because it affects their ability to move Juwan Taylor in the left tackle seamlessly, which is what they want to be able to do. Andy Reid has talked about it. We'll talk about it later in this podcast, but it just feels as if we've kind of taken guys like Andrew Wiley for granted, whoever's been playing over there. And I agree with you. You've said it for the last, year and a half or whatever. Lucas Niang, Derek Kennard, those options aren't great. And get a right tackle, your quarterback feels a lot better about life.
Yeah, it does. I think, first of all, we are live tonight. I know a couple of people asking in the chat room if you catch us via the podcast.
Tommy with a bad guess for the first time in his entire life.
Yeah, it's the first time. No, trust me, he's lobbed a few bad ones out there. Listen, by the way, I love this. The chat never forgets. The Red Gold and Bold chat never forgets. Jeff said he forgot about my internet problems. Not in the chat room. If you're catching us later on via the podcast, you can be a part of the conversation. We stream live about 8 p.m. Central on Tuesdays for the Red Gold and Bold. Look, I think. This draft, I wrote a piece, we've got my radio station 810 has a little draft magazine that's coming out or is out. I don't know. I did it whenever I was told to do it, but I basically broke down the point system for what the Chiefs were given last year by two different points ones, because everybody's got a different valuation chart, which you use for, figuring out trades, like, the value of each draft pick within it. And I gave the point value and then what each of those two had for this year. One of them, which I believe is the over the cap one, gave the Chiefs, I think, roughly 70% of the draft capital that they had last year. I forget the other one, and I apologize, but it gave this year's draft about 50% the weight that it had. That one seemed to put almost no value into seventh round picks, which didn't give much to the sevens last year, but weighted even higher the extra 3 picks they had in the top 103 that they don't have this year. So somewhere between 50 and 70%, 75%, I think maybe was over the cap's number, is how much capital you have. So what do they have to get done? Well, I think first of all, you have to understand you don't have last year's draft capital, right? And not only did they do great last year, because they had capital, like we don't worry about the fact that to this point, Najee Johnson was a seventh round pick. If all he does is play special teams and make this team for 2 or 3 years, that's a hell of a pick, really. But Darian Kennard, the apple of Eric Eager's eye, the fact that he really did not play at all this year, you don't really care. The fact that they traded up in the 4th round, moved, I think it was 3 picks for 1 to get him, you don't mind as much because so many other guys hit, but they hit because of how many lottery tickets you had, right? So number one, you have less lottery tickets, and then they hit it at an abnormally high rate. And Brett Veach has been pretty good of late. I mean, if you back up and go Nick Bolton and Creed Humphrey in the 2nd and Trey Smith in the 6th the year before, that's looking pretty good. L'Jarius Sneed in the 4th, he's done real well, right? Like I think we'd all agree that he's been at least above average. We could argue about how far above average, but I think in this one, it's even more important that they get the depth done. Like, I don't think they wanted to roll $12 million of Patrick Mahomes' salary. I think they wanted to hold it where it was. They had to, right? Like, there's no knight in white shining armor that's going to come in free agency here at the last hour. There may be an Ingram, who is it? The Bengal and Seahawk they signed last year. 6'6" D end.
Carlos Dunlap.
Carlos Dunlap. There'll probably be 1 or 2 of those along the way. But like as we look at these different spots, there's no last minute starting right tackle. There's no last minute number 2 wide receiver. So I do think that they've got to hit. I think they've got to come away with 1 starter in this draft, right? I think that's fair to say, right? Like with a late first, late second, late third, they've got to come away with 1 starter. Will we say they need to come away with 2? Would that be too much to ask, Jeff?
No. Look, I mean, I think what's intriguing about this draft is the last time the Chiefs were drafting after they won the Super Bowl, they took Clyde Edwards-Helaire, which hasn't worked out. And Willie Gay, which has been okay, has not been a great player, but it was a risky pick. And so I think they've drafted better when they felt more as if, hey, we've got to get back in the Super Bowl. We need to get some needs resolved here. So will they be as pragmatic about it as they were in the previous couple of years? That's my question. But I agree with you. I think that you need to find people who can help you. Again, at right tackle, edge rushers are a lot harder to find. Clearly, later in the draft. Receivers, I don't think anybody who they draft at receiver is going to come in here and set the world on fire. I think that's any they can get a player who can help them down the road. But Sky Moore, McCole Hardman, there's been enough body of evidence in that regard when it comes to receivers drafted, how they play this offense early on, to know that it's not going to be somebody who's going to be a huge difference maker. So, but yeah, I totally agree that you have to keep fortifying your roster and finding players who can help you right away, even when you're picking late.
To Jeff's point about the wide receiver, how about this one from Nick, Eric? If we draft a wide out, I'd really like it to not take 3 seasons for him to learn the playbook, right? Yeah. Like, is that, could they find a wide out? I talked with some folks yesterday, and it was kind of like top 4 wide outs, and then, like maybe they said it's definitely not last year's class of wide receivers. What's the likelihood that they find a starting wide receiver?
I think better than 50-50. Here's the thing. Last year at this time.
Is that because what they have, anybody could start over, or is that because they find a quality wide receiver?
A little of both. Like last year, we were talking about at this time, Spags doesn't like to play young players and blah, blah, blah. Like we were talking about structural things that were very true about the Kansas City Chiefs, where when it was, Spags, and it was a little bit overblown, right? Because L'Jarius Sneed had played before. Some guys had played minutes before, but the guys like Willie Gay took a year to play. Nick Bolton played a little bit his rookie year, but wasn't a starter right away. It took and then a season ago, they played rookies. They played McDuffie early. They played Watson early. They played Joshua Williams early. They played Brian Cook early. And they played Karlaftis early. And so we upended, some of our initial assumptions about the Chiefs. Now everybody's saying, rookie receivers don't play for Andy Reid. Sure, but out of necessity this year, they might have to, right? For the first time. And to me, look, Sky Moore is a project, right? I think he comes in with a little bit of a leg up over a rookie, but not that much, right? Especially if the guy's a first-round guy. And, Kadarius Toney comes in with a leg up. But the injury, that leg could be broken by the second week, right? And then obviously Marquez Valdez-Scantling is a veteran who is good at a number of things and not so good at a number of things. So he can certainly be had. So there's an opening here. And we saw last year that it was on the other side of the ball, but the Chiefs broke a tendency by playing young guys in the secondary early on last year. So I think it could happen at the wide receiver position as well.
I like we have the question here, and I'm trying to find it. And I know, of course, DeAndre Hopkins' name comes up. His name has been floated around.
They're not trading for DeAndre Hopkins.
It's that time in the podcast.
We just stop Hopkins. All this. They don't have enough cash to trade for DeAndre Hopkins, for one, because everybody can say, you can redo his deal, blah blah blah. They really can't, right? When they trade him over here, right? Arizona's already going to accumulate $20 million dead accelerated onto their cap, right? Arizona's not going to then come up and say, we'll take, it's 19.5 this year, it's 14.5 the following year. I actually wrote about this on SumerSports.com. Why hasn't DeAndre Hopkins been traded yet? Go to SumerSports.com and read it. But it to me, it's if you want Arizona to take on more money, then you're going to have to give up a second round pick or higher to get him. And so or if you want to only give up a fifth, you're going to have to eat all 19.5, which means that you're going to have to make a move on Chris Jones. You're going to have to make a move on Mahomes. And guess what, folks? Any move that you make that prorates money has to go into escrow right away, right? You don't get to save money here. If you extend Chris Jones, that signing bonus, the Hunts have to pay it out right now. Same thing with any Mahomes restructure, anything. And I'm telling you, it's not about the cap as much as it's about the cash. The cold hard money that the Hunts have to pay out. And the Chiefs are one of, I'm not going to say cheap, but they spend the least amount of cash year to year. This is something that you got to pay attention to. So DeAndre Hopkins is not getting traded to the Chiefs.
That's right. Ask the NFLPA about that, right?
Right. You talk about we'll get to it a little bit about the grades on them, but I do think it's of note. I mean, we saw Allen Robinson, which we'll talk more in our 2D podcast about, but we saw him basically be given away by the Rams, and they're going to eat all the money this year just to get out from under the cap next year. I mean, they're starting to, really feel the crunch and have to make moves. And we'll also talk about Caleb Williams. I think the Caleb Williams tank fest has already begun, and I think that's affecting the quarterbacks in this year, at least what I'm hearing. Now, maybe that's all a smoke screen. You hear a lot of things this time of year as we're coming down the stretch run. But let's go back to the part about Chris Jones. And I know, I think it was, who was it who asked that? Terry asked the question about, he thought the Chris Jones would have been settled sooner to open up some cap space. Listen, I think in a perfect world, yeah, but it takes two to tango. Like, I still think Chris Jones is going to get renegotiated. I think it will happen before the season. But when did it happen last time? It happened in August, it was like days before they were going to camp. And so I think that's when that will come about. And I think part of it is it's just the natural evolution. And we talk about this with Patrick Mahomes and what's gone on now with Jalen Hurts contract. But Chris Jones needs everybody else to settle out. Like the Jeffrey Simmons deal was big, right? To get that, what's his name with the Jets? Jones wants to go last.
Williams.
Yeah, he wants to go last so that he can be tops. Like, let the market set, and then he'll go. And when you're asking a player to extend when he doesn't have to, there has to be a give and take. And so I think that happens, but I don't think it happens now. And I think it's a sign of how you manage your cap. The answer to being able to fit other players in cannot be constantly renegotiating other guys, because then you're just putting off money for later. At some point, you've got to get to where you enter into the free agent time where you're 50, 60 million under. It can't all be about chasing the money of who the guy is out there. If they were in the mood to get DeAndre Hopkins at his current price, they'd have done other things. But that decision was really made 2 years ago that they weren't going to touch DeAndre Hopkins when they paid Chris Jones, when they paid Patrick Mahomes. That's
or
it.
2 years ago when they literally were not interested in Julio Jones one iota, right? It's the same thing, right? It's an expensive guy that's on the other side of 30 that you're going to have to how much do the Titans pay for 1 year of BS Julio Jones? We see this all the time, and we love Julio's a Hall of Famer. DeAndre Hopkins is a Hall of Famer, just not for the Chiefs.
Yeah. It's Odell Beckham. Yeah, same thing.
Yeah.
I mean, Odell at least is a little younger than those guys, right?
Yeah, he is a little younger, but I don't know.
He's like Hopkins is 31, right? Odell's 30, right?
Yeah,
a little younger. But yeah, I mean the Ravens are also on tilt right now. That's why they're acting.
That's who makes those moves.
That's right.
Desperate teams. Teams
that are desperate. Listen, if your parking lot is a problem, you may be desperate, then don't worry. Just call Gann Asphalt and Concrete. Find them at 816-484-3338. Free consultations, no commissions, in-house crews. Every project, written warranty, people. Go to GannAsphalt.com. One contractor, all things parking lot. That is Gann Asphalt and Concrete. Jalen Hurts, Jeff, is now the highest paid quarterback in the National Football League. Burrow, Jackson, Herbert, they're all still to come. I don't know that they're all going to get more than Hurts. We know Lamar Jackson hung up on the guaranteed part, which I love the new term, practical guarantees. It's 110 million guarantee, but the practical guarantees are 196 million on Jalen Hurts. What that means is he's so freaking expensive to cut, you couldn't cut him if you wanted to. If you don't want him to play for you, you just put him on IR and wait it out because it's cheaper to just have him there and you take up a roster spot. That's something we've tried to explain a number of times, about the Mahomes contract and the rolling guarantees that are on that. But what does this ultimately mean for Patrick Mahomes and his contract?
Look, when he did his deal, his current deal, I had at least 2 or 3 people, guys who were front office people, say that deal's probably not going to go the full 10 years. That at some point it'll get torn up. They'll do a different deal because it was so team friendly. And he wants to be team friendly. But as we all know, if he's the 11th highest paid quarterback in the NFL, that looks very strange. And so, yeah, I think at some point, I don't think he's going to have to ask for it. I would expect some point the Chiefs would say, look, we've got to do something to make this right for him. And if you get to the point where Trevor Lawrence is getting paid more money than Patrick Mahomes, and I know it's all, whoever the flavor of the month is, who's up at that time, whoever is getting a certain APY, the numbers are all kind of fudgeable. But again, yeah, it's just people got so caught up in it's $500 million they're paying him. All these guys that we're talking about are going to make that kind of money and more. I mean, Jalen Hurts' next deal after this one runs up is probably going to be $350 million. So he's going to be at $600 million, over the course of whatever it is, 8 or 9 years, 10 years. So yeah, I expect it to be done. I've never thought anything else about it.
I'll bet money there's no next deal on Jalen Hurts at that price, because I don't think he'll be physically capable of playing at a high level. Which, if Eric Eager gets his wish and Patrick Mahomes continues to throw with defensive ends draping off his back because he doesn't want left tackles, then maybe that'll be the same with Patrick Mahomes. But that's a subject for another day, right, Eric? We can argue about left tackle.
They have a left tackle.
We'll get to it in a minute. But how about it? What does this do for the Patrick Mahomes contract?
I don't know where I became a hater of left tackles, but let's belly up here. And I mean, the Mahomes deal is, they're going to redo it, but what are they going to do? I mean, the structure is fine. Like, the structure is very effective, right? It's very effective in giving a team a lot of flexibility and Mahomes a lot of money. I think that they'll probably redo it, but I think that they'll do kind of the same thing, right? I mean, winning 2 Super Bowls is incredibly important. And that was a very positive development, which is like, look, I can see why guys like Dak Prescott, I can see why guys like Jalen Hurts, I see why guys like Kirk Cousins, I can see why they try to get theirs, because they're not going to be around for that long. Like, Mahomes, having been around, having gotten the 2 Super Bowls, getting the endorsements, and he's making enough money. I don't think it's going to be that drastic, but I could be wrong. I mean, what is the point of Patrick Mahomes getting a fully guaranteed deal on paper when he's not even playing in that game anymore?
Playing in what game?
Well, he doesn't need to be I'm the highest paid quarterback in the NFL. He doesn't need that feather in his cap to be a complete, to have this legacy, right? His legacy, anybody who isn't certifiably insane believes Mahomes is the best player on the planet, right? Everybody, he's won 2 Super Bowls. He's been to 3. He's got all of the gotchas there, right? And so if anybody ever says hey, but you're not the highest paid quarterback, he's like, I was when I signed, and I'm also kicking your ass up and down. He doesn't need that the way that Hurts and Prescott and all those other guys needed that feather in the cap because they couldn't win. And same with Rodgers. Rodgers needs that pat on the back financially because he can't win, right? He can't win championships. So I don't see Mahomes getting a materially different deal. He'll re-up it again and be the highest paid guy for a moment in time. But I think that the deal's I think he gets it. I think he's part of winning here.
I'll put this back up from Brad. Brady did it for years, meaning take less. I think a couple things here of note. He can make less these years. If he gets $100 million signing bonus, prorated out, bring his number down. The thing about Brady is you look at the Peyton Manning and the Brady numbers. The Manning numbers were always higher against the cap because they were constantly tearing up and redoing the Brady deal, giving him a big fat chunk of money up front, which he hands to his investment people, and he makes even more money off of. And so the actual real dollars were pretty similar between Brady and Manning. But the way the Patriots did it, they managed the cap better and kept the Brady number down lower. Listen, what do you hear Patrick Mahomes talk about? Well, when I talk to Tom, he spends a lot of time talking to Tom Brady. Tom Brady's on his favorites. And I guarantee you Tom Brady is telling him, listen, kid, here's the deal. You're the best in the game and everybody knows it. So you don't necessarily have to. For a lot of these guys, they're a linebacker. Which linebacker's better? I don't know. You like blondes or brunettes, they're all pretty much the same. You're the acknowledged best of the best. You don't need the contract to prove it. These other guys need that contract. And oh, by the way, all you got to do is say, take a look at what I make off the field. I make 10 times off the field what Justin Herbert makes.
And Brady was running a business out of Gillette Stadium on top of that. A training business.
and the Chiefs will stay out of the way and let Patrick Mahomes do that, whatever his interests are. I mean, the big money. And then at the end of the day, Tom Brady had sitting there for 1 year or 2 years, a $34 million a year broadcast deal waiting for him. And now, how did he get that broadcast deal? Did he get that broadcast deal because his agent negotiated the best deal? Did he get it because he was slicker at the contract game? No, he got it because he's the undisputed greatest quarterback that ever
He
played.
won 7 freaking Super Bowls.
And if Patrick Mahomes ends with being the number 2 quarterback of all time, or God forbid the greatest quarterback of all times, he'll have hundreds of millions of dollars waiting for him at the end. So no, how does this contract
Also, by the way, the Bucs are eating like $30 million this year of Brady's money. It's going to be the same thing when when Mahomes' career is over in Kansas City. This podcast is going to suck, right? Like it's going to be a dark season of us three talk gray hair. We're going to be talking about Blaine Gabbert like grinding out some games here. And it's going to be bad because the Chiefs are going to eat
Gabbert will be gone.
That,
I was going to say.
Blaine Gabbert will be gone from the NFL when that
50-year-old Blaine Gabbert.
I'm just the equivalent, right? Tanner McKee will be starting games for the Chiefs. And we're all going to be like, oh, because Mahomes had 60 million dead. And you know what? We're going to say what Bucs fans said. Good. It was worth it.
By the way, Blaine Gabbert, dislike, Jeff, as the backup quarterback.
I'm fine with it. I'm fine. Okay. I think he fits the mold of what they would need, somebody with experience. He's not obviously a spring chicken, but I think you want to have somebody in the mold of Chad Henne and not a developmental guy, whoever was Shane Buechele, whatever his name is, the guy behind him already. So I like it.
I like that he might be able to actually run the quarterback sneak. Eric, thumbs up or thumbs down on Gabbert as the backup?
That's fine.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, he'll probably be pretty good if he gets a start or two for the Chiefs because there's a reason he's staying in the league for this long. Like Henne. Henne was drafted, 3 years before Gabbert? So you're kind of just taking that clock and pushing it back 3 years. But I like that. I mean, like he's a guy that's been there for a while. If you start him in week 18, he's not going to be a disaster. If you have to play a series or two in an important game, he won't be a nightmare. Like he's won in the NFL, or not won, but like he's won games. He's played games. He has more touchdowns. He has 51 career touchdown passes or something. So like he's not like a complete buffoon here.
Did Eric just give the equivalent of participation ribbon? Is that he has
nothing wrong with participation trophies, by the way. They're kids.
Okay. All right. I get it. All right. Good for you. I like that. All right. Let's talk a little bit about the receivers. All going down to Texas. Patrick Mahomes throwing with the receivers. Is this how important is this to the chemistry? And do you think this helps build back what they had last year, Jeff?
Oh, it's vital. I mean, you don't do what they did last year without what Mahomes did with those guys last year, and not just the timing of it, but it's just learning personalities and building relationships. And I think what Andy does with this is a really good thing because so many players don't want to be doing offseason training programs, certainly not the first phase when it's just so benign. And so to give the guys a break and allow them to go someplace else and hang out and learn about each other, it's almost like having a second mini camp. To be honest with you, so it's just, to me, it makes a lot of sense, and it's really crucial given what you're talking about here, because aside from the guys the three biggest names in Tony and MBS and Sky Moore, you've also got Justin Watson back in the mix, who he's okay. I mean, I think he made a couple plays here or there, but maybe he can be more for them. And Richie James being in it's just on paper, it's just not a great group to look at. But last year on paper, it wasn't that great either. And you saw what he made of that bunch based on what they did. And so it's like, I mean, he's at a point now in his career where he can do that kind of stuff and he understands what's expected of them. And so, yeah, I think it's vital because if a couple of these guys are duds, then it's going to be a different kind of offense.
Eric, you got a favorite on who emerges as the number 2 guy, after the big Texas throwing session?
Who's the number 1 guy?
Travis Kelce.
Oh, I see. I think it's MVS. Like I mean, and it might be a dark time if that's the case, but I don't like to index on the AFC Championship game where he was absolute nails and did play the juju role and was great. But what I like about this receiving core is what I really like about this receiving core is they all have, they should all play with low self-esteem. What I mean is Pat's like, hey, let's go to Texas. They're all like, all right, I'm going to Texas, right? But you're a 0 for 0 guy today, MBS. He's like, fine. Did we win? Like, I think that's always, like, to me, that's kind of what this receiving core has to be. And so I love the fact that they're all going to Texas, right? Like, they all need to be, they're all Pat's wingmen. Like, and in some ways, like, I think that's kind of, what Mahomes signed up for and probably wants now that Tyreek is not on the team.
Justin Ross, is that where you're putting your money, Jeff, on who emerges? We had questions about Justin Ross to Patrick Mahomes, and he certainly, heaped praises on the young man. Is that where you're putting your money?
The new Jody Fortson, right? He's the guy everybody wants to see make it happen. I'm not putting. I've learned in the NFL never to put money on guys who get hurt before their careers start. So it's like it's never really works out well. So no, I'm not gonna ride that train. Cornell Powell's still around too, isn't he?
Yeah.
As we checked, wasn't he still in the mix somewhere?
Yeah.
Look, it's
Clemson legend.
If I'm putting money on somebody, I'm putting money on the guy Andy talks the most about, and that's Kadarius Toney. He seems to be super high on him and what he can become, and loves the skill set. It almost feels like some of these guys are like almost like a run and shoot offense they're about to run here. There's so many guys who are they're just smaller, quicker, run after the catch type dudes, and if that's what they're going to do or something like equivalent to that, I think Tony's the most likely guy to bet on. I don't think MBS is going to be a consistent player ever throughout his career, but I think that they will try to make the most out of what Kadarius Toney is.
Yeah. How about John Ross? I had somebody today tell me they think John Ross is the sleeper. This guy went number 8 or number 9 in front of Patrick Mahomes in their draft class. Speedster out of Washington. I actually like them taking a flyer on John Ross because I think, he can stretch the defense. He was productive at Washington. I expect nothing. I hope for something.
Where was he last year?
Where did he go?
I think the Bengals drafted him, but then he
he played for the Giants once.
Yeah, he was another Giant, another former Giant. Yep.
Bengals. So they got 3 ex-Giants.
He played
Ricky
nowhere.
James.
I want to be clear. He played nowhere last year.
That's
Though
what I thought.
He was with the Giants in 21, free agency in March of 22, and signed with the Chiefs in February of 23.
Yeah.
Look, the Chiefs have more like, now with Gabbert. What was Gabbert? Pick 10 or 11? Like, they have a lot of like former first-round picks that
they
just
love
like
it.
chill on the end of the bench for them.
I love it. But I will say this. I like being the third team on a guy. Right? Like if a guy had great expectations, first team, he's arrogant, he's a pain in the ass. Second team, usually that second team swoops right in and is like, yeah, those guys are jackasses. I'll show them now. They keep with their crappy ways. This guy's got cut again and sat for a year. He's never going to be motivated. It's right now. So if you can get something from him, let me ask you this, John Ross.
Soren, was that by the way, was that your dating strategy in college? I want to be the third guy.
Sure, why not?
I want to come in, like, by then, she's learned the world a little bit. She figured it out a little bit. Is that
worldly? Are you? Is that the word you're looking for?
Yeah.
Yeah. Sure. Yeah, that makes you feel better, Eric. Yeah. Justin or John Ross? Who will have more statistics as a Kansas City Chief, Eric?
John Ross will. It's more of a drop in PFF or at Kansas City. Then
better question: Jeff, who's gone first?
Jeff, who does more, John or Justin?
I'm going
Ross?
to assume Justin Ross, just because, unlike you, I think guys who are still sticking around, they can't find a place to make a home after whatever it's been 5 or 6 years in the NFL. Don't hang around the NFL much longer. So I'll give John Ross a chance to actually be on Justin Ross. Chance to be on the roster.
We can't even get this thing straight. It's such
the same guy.
Oh, come on now. Again, Asphalt and Concrete is very proud to sponsor a question about whether John Ross or Justin Ross will have a better career with the Kansas City Chiefs. Unlike that question, they are one of the fastest growing companies in Kansas City. They're a big deal. They're hiring for all positions. If you want to be a part of their team, hiring all positions, project manager, dump truck drivers, operators, and crew Starting pay up to $30 per hour based on experience with paid time off and insurance. Just to name a few of the benefits, check out GANAsphalt.com for more information. One contractor, all things parking lot, GAN Asphalt and Concrete. Let's
Can I pause for a second? I want to.
Are you going to give us
looking at John Ross's PFF page?
Okay.
Over under number of touchdowns John Ross has had in his career.
Over on 1.
No, it's hard over because he had 2 in one game in the opening game like
3
3 years ago, which had every fantasy football owner. I think he had like 150 and 2 touches in the opener for the Bengals in his second or third year because it had every dipwad like myself scrambling to the waiver wire to grab him. Like, oh, it's going to come together. Let's go. Here we go. So I remember the one game he had 2 touchdowns and got me to pick him up on like 3 teams. Over under. I'm going to put the over under would be 3.5, and I'll take that. He had
John Ross had 2 targets as a rookie, no catches. His second year, he had 7 touchdowns. He had 3 touchdowns as a second year player, and then he had 1 in the 21 season for the Giants. He had 11 career touchdowns, boys. That is what.
Wow.
All about
and
John
nobody
Ross.
wanted him last year.
Nobody wanted him. Tells you he's a whole lot of fun to hang around. Is what it says to me. Let's hear a little bit of what Andy Reid had to say. We've talked about Juwan Taylor. He talked about playing wherever. Andy Reid talked about Juwan Taylor and left tackle.
I liked him. I liked his tape. We saw him firsthand a couple times too. So even though he was on the right side, I think he can transfer over to the left side. He's really a good athlete, and I think he's excited about that. And that doesn't mean he can't play the right side. I mean, if he's at another left tackle, he can play the right side. So he gives you flexibility. He probably can jump in a guard, and he's smart. He probably can play center if we had to. He's a pretty talented kid, and look forward to getting him in here. I think that was a great pickup by Brett.
One thing that jumped out at me, Jeff, was he can even play left tackle.
Yeah.
You think that was a slip?
All over the map, right?
Yeah.
With that answer, it felt. Look, I'm going to be optimistic about Juwan Taylor, and I hope it works out for him. He seems like a nice guy. Wasn't Andy Reid talking about Lucas Niang being able to play left tackle at one point?
I don't remember that. Do you, Eric? I don't remember him talking left.
I mean, look, guys.
I talked left with Niang, and I would like to find that audio and destroy it. But
back this truck up, guys. This is what I'm talking about at the beginning of the show. 2 years ago, they needed bodies on offensive line, and that's why they got Orlando Brown. If they didn't do that, they would have had to go into the draft with, you need a tackle, right? Last year was corner. At least now, they kind of need one, but it's not devastating the way it would have been 2 years ago when we were talking about Lucas Niang playing left tackle off of what was it called? Like an opt-out season. He didn't even play as a rookie because he opted out with COVID.
So you remember that then?
Yeah.
We did. We talked about him. We did. Andy Reid.
They talked about it. I think
Andy
Reid was quoted to say he could play left tackle.
Who said that?
I think he said it.
I think that they were. I mean, they legit had to put a guy on the depth chart before they got Orlando. My thing is betting man, Juwan Taylor's a right tackle for this team, right? And they're just they're putting down a decent amount of coin because
to start this year,
it depends upon what they get in the draft. If they get a Haas in the draft, then sure. But I think that they're just getting on the green at tackle, and then the next guy can, I think that the next guy is going to be a draft pick for them at some point, but it can't be, they can't just come out and say we have a wide open hole at left tackle. That was what the slip by Andy Reid was, which is to say we are hoping that somebody can play left tackle for us.
Yeah. I'm with you. I mean, I do think they're we have to have a real NFL starting tackle, and Juwan Taylor is that. But I think at left tackle, they would like to get something more. And if you see them move up, it will be for left tackle. And I think it'll be interesting to see who they get, right? I think if you look at the mock drafts, if the Oklahoma kid, and of course I don't have my mock drafts opened up, but I want to say Anton Jameson, but that's not it. But if he's there,
He was
Anton Harris.
North Carolina power
Anton
forward.
Harris, yes, exactly,
Yeah.
right.
I know that's
If,
not it. Yeah.
I think if he's there, if Harrison's there, he can play. If they end up with DeJuan Jones from Ohio State, I think he goes to right tackle. I don't think he can handle. I don't think he's got the quickness to handle the left side. So I think it'll depend upon who's there, what they can get, and if they do trade up for somebody, I think it'll be for a left tackle when it's all said and done. But I do think it's of note. I mean, they're not like all in on he's our left tackle, but then again, they don't have to go and sit and apparently stroke his ego and make sure that he knows he's going to play left tackle like they had to with Orlando Brown. And I think we'll always look back and be a little bit shell shocked by the fact that they went out of their way. Oh, he's our left tackle, and said all these great things about him when he was a flawed player, but he was better than a lot of crappy left tackles that are out there. Just wasn't a great left tackle, and I think Juwan Taylor shapes up to be the same kind of guy. We'll see what they get in the draft. Jeff, you alluded to it. This is a little bit longer, but I here's something I think is interesting. I mean, we played that cut from Andy Reid. I think that one on Juwan Taylor was about 25 seconds or so. Andy Reid doesn't talk for long about anything, right? Except for when he starts talking about the NFLPA grades and defending his guy. Remember, he brought the trainer, Rick Burkhalter, with him from Philadelphia. And I had an interesting conversation with Tim Grunhard today about this subject. But this is Andy Reid. We know is going to be asked. A friend of the pod, Sam McDowell, asking this question, and I'm glad he did, to Andy Reid about the fact that even Rick Burkhalter was the only guy by name that was talked about, and it wasn't in a positive fashion.
Yeah, so that's a good question, Sam. That was done early in the season. We had a lot of new folks in the building here, and everything kind of starts in that training room. Those are the first guys between the training room and the equipment room and weight room. Those are the first people that are going to be seen. And that training room is not leisure world, right? So that's a place that you come in and you get your rehab done. It's not. That's what it is, and that's how we do it here, and other places do it different, but we're in there to fix your problems, and if you have a problem, we'll get it taken care of. And Rick is in a position where he's got to enforce that. I mean, that's just kind of the bottom line on it, and so it's different when you get different people in, and the trainer is normally not necessarily the good guy in those situations. So it's but there's a reason why you have the training room. But we've looked at all of this. We've evaluated it. We've looked at it. We're in a position now with our facility, which also got knocked down, where there are future plans for whatever direction it goes for new facilities. And so I lived this when I was in Philadelphia. That takes time. It takes time to get all that planned out. And you're not going to take and put a whole load back into your facility that you have here if there's future plans. So, I get all of that too, right? But we've tried to keep it where it's a great place to come to work. I think we do a good job with that. I don't think we're behind necessarily. And things might not be as fancy as other places, but we normally come here to work hard. I think if you would have talked to the guys at the end of the season, they would have been probably a little different evaluation. We try to stay on top of all that, make sure we know how the guys are feeling on that.
Jeff, what do you think?
That's a long-winded way of trying to defend your trainer and defend what's going on over there. Look, we talked about this when the thing came out. I'm not putting a whole lot of stock in what happens in the facility in terms of how it affects what you put on the field. They've had a lot of success as a franchise, so you really can't knock them for that. I think it's more of a situation where they're embarrassed by it. They want to – Andy cares about how players feel. He's a player's coach, and so he wants to sell it. I mean, this whole – I wonder if Clark Hunt's sitting there thinking, okay, I got to build a new facility now because my head coach just said we're talking about doing something. I've been all over the NFL. I've seen amazing facilities, places like Dallas and Baltimore. They have done amazing things. I was in Tampa Bay when they worked out of trailers. And so I've seen that too. And they won a championship doing that. And so ultimately, does it affect whether guys want to play for you in free agency? I think money affects that. And I don't buy the whole thing that they did the thing later in the year to have been different. It's like, how many new guys did they have on the team? Like, clearly a lot of guys felt this way. They put it out there. If it changes something, more power to them for that.
Sam McDowell, the Kansas City Star columnist, said that, they did this in like March. So it was really the end of the 21 season's players that were doing it. And like, maybe there's some guys that moved on that didn't get it. But, Tim Grunhard was very adamant today. He said, listen, there are guys that like to go in there and just hang out and BS and everything. And that's not what that area is for, right? Like it is for getting work done. And, that the trainer is kind of the guy that has to write it. There are guys that are trying to just, get out of going to practice that are in there. And it's his job to push them out there. I mean,
well, the damning thing, I'll cut you off. The damning thing was they felt they couldn't trust him, right? And they couldn't talk about injuries. That's different from, hey, I want to hang out. You're being an asshole and being hard on me.
I agree. And there needs to be a trust level there. But it's clear. I think what was clear to me, Eric, is Rick Burkhalter's marching to the orders he's been given, right? Look, and I hear Andy Reid talk like that. He's doing what he's been asked to do by the head coach. And I think, listen, we're all for personal safety and everybody's health should come first. We talk about when we have guys that are like, hey, I got a doctor's appointment and they're going to miss something at work. I always say, look, family and health come first. Like, go take care of that. We'll figure the rest out otherwise. I think for the most part, that's, most places operate that way. But like, I do think there is an element of this is an industry that asks you to push through physical pain, physical injuries. And I think Andy Reid's probably leaning back in his chair going, what do these people want? An A grade with the NFLPA and a 7-10 team? Or do they want trophies and the D+ for my trainer who kicks their ass back out on the field? What do you people want? I'll bet that's what he's thinking in his head, Eric.
Yeah. I mean, this is all a reflection of leadership, right? So I think I think it's good for Andy Reid to stand up for the guys who work for him. But it ultimately, to your point, it ultimately is a leadership thing. It's an ownership thing. It's all of that. So to your point, like, could they have better people interactions, right? Could they execute better? Sure. But the overall direction of things is sent from the top, right? So that should be, where this is directed. I'm happy that Andy Reid didn't throw anybody under the bus because, ultimately the buck stops with him, and it's good for him to at least acknowledge that.
But I will say this, and Mizzou pointed this out, they can at least get some chair backs, maybe paint the wooden lockers. I mean, Jeff's in there. There are some things.
I saw Marcus Allen, like some kind of biography on our network the other day, and he was taking off his shirt in front of the same lockers that are in there now. I'm just like, God, these things are old.
They are old.
Ago.
Yeah, in the practice facility, they're old. They have new, nice ones at the stadium, but the practice facility ones, I think, are the old ones from up at the stadium. Just got moved down to the practice facility, and it is kind of a dingy, it's not a modern, like, we had somebody say, like, hey, at Alabama it looks like a spa, and I think that's a fair point. And so I I think the structural stuff, like, a little paint, a few throw pillows, some flowers around the place, like that kind of stuff, that comes back to ownership. And I get like, oh, we don't want to put a bunch of money into something that's going to be done away. I don't think anyone's asking you to put $50 million in, but you can buy decent chairs, right? Like that. If the guys are giving you feedback that, like, I'd like to be able to sit in a chair, like routinely you walk in there and the defensive backs are all laying on their back on the floor, right? Like guys lay on the floor because they literally just have a little stool. Like maybe they'll read their mail, check their phone on the stool, but if they're like just going to chill before they go out to practice, they're laying on their back on the floor. And I think that is something that ownership should take a note of. So we'll see. All right, listen up. If you catch us via the podcast, we stream live. It is Tuesday nights at about 8 p. Central when we get things started. You can be a part of the conversation right there. We got a chat room. We can see your comments. We've been talking about them here throughout. Remember, we're proudly brought to you by our friends at Gann Asphalt and Concrete, Kansas City's best full-service paving and pavement maintenance contractor. Parking lot problems are not a problem if you know Gann Asphalt and Concrete. They've been making problems disappear since 1994. Everything, whether it's just striping or building a brand new parking lot, they do it all. It's Gann Asphalt and Concrete. Find them online right now at gannasphalt.com. Don't forget they're hiring as well. Paid time off and insurance as well. Just some of the benefits you can enjoy at Gann Asphalt. So find them online right now at gannasphalt.com. So for Eric Eager from Sumer Sports, Jeff Chadiha from the NFL Network, my name is Soren Petro saying thank you very much for joining us here on the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast.